My name is Matthew Sturkey, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Stone Mill Log and Timber Homes, and wanted to talk to you today about maintenance practices. As I said, we've got a very close friend and special guest with us from SASHCO that's going to be talking about how to properly maintain. And our goal here is to educate our prospective clients, our homeowners, on how to properly maintain their home over time, and what design criteria goes into the front end to properly set you up to succeed. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to give you a little bit of history on our company. Not sure how much you know about us, but we are family owned and operated for the 46 years. We started in 1974. We built over 2,000 log and timber homes in our 46-year history. We specialize in the design, fabrication, and construction of log and timber frame homes across the United States. We help clients looking to build forever homes as their primary residence, second homes to become primary residences, and everything in between. We specialize in properties that range from lake properties to mountain properties to equestrian and farm type properties. So if you're looking to get out into the more rural areas and enjoy a lifestyle with a log and timber home, that is who we are and what we do, and that's what we love. And so that's our 30-second commercial there. I want to talk briefly about the goals for today. Most importantly, the goal is to educate you on how to properly maintain your log or timber home. When are the best practices and the best times to do inspections and to do maintenance? And there's a lot of things that go into it. It's not just after the construction and in the future life of the home, but it starts with the design process and before you ever even begin construction. So those are just a couple of goals for the presentation that we want to make sure we achieve. As we go through this presentation, we'll probably answer a lot of your questions. If you have questions, please put them into the chat for Dawn, and she's going to moderate and ask those questions in that Q&A session at the end. Also, one note, our sales consultants are here. Unfortunately, Mike couldn't join us, and I can't tell if he's on here, but he is not feeling well today, so he may not be on here. But if there are questions that don't get answered during the presentation or in the Q&A session, please reach out to your sales consultant, or we will reach out to you and just make sure everything got answered, so you get all your questions answered along the way. So, as we mentioned, there's a lot of things that go into properly maintaining your home and setting your build up for future success. And that is one of our many goals, is to partner with you, to partner with vendors and suppliers like Paul and SASHCO, who have the same vested interest for our clients and our homeowners. And it starts for us in the design process, and we're going to talk about a few design tips that will help you lower long-term maintenance. And then as we move forward in the presentation, Paul will take over and share his expertise with you as well. But not going in order of this list, there are many variables that contribute to maintenance and how much maintenance you have, starting with covered porches and good overhangs and solar orientation of the home, and making sure that you have good shade that's going to take care of and protect the home as well, getting the structure up off finished grade. And one thing that's not on this list is finishes, the types of materials that you choose for gable ends and even fascia material, and the things that you choose for dormers will have an effect on how often you have to maintain. Certainly, we deal with a lot of clients, and everyone is different. Every client is a little bit different in what they want that finished home to look like and what choices they want to make. But the choices that you make with coatings and wood treatment products, and the choices that you make with your finishes, will ultimately dictate how much maintenance you have. And so starting with covered porches, it's really important. They protect the home. Yes, they are a short-term upfront investment, but long-term they do save you money over time, because with covered porches protecting the walls, you have less maintenance on the walls. You have less sunlight exposure, less moisture exposure, less exposure to the harsh elements. Good overhangs is extremely important. We typically say 24-inch minimum overhangs in your eaves and your rakes. You can do 36. We can do bigger overhangs, but 24 inches would be the minimum. That's typically what we do as a minimum overhang. Gutters and downspouts are going to be key in this. We always encourage our homeowners to do gutters and downspouts, because all that water that's coming off the roof needs to have a place to go. It needs to terminate into a gutter, coming through down a downspout and into some drainage to get it away from the structure, so that moisture and water does not collect around the foundation. That's just with any home. And a lot of these design tips are not just for log and timber homes, but they're for any type of home. Flashings and some of your connections, some of the log to subfloor connections, and some of your overhang connections where your tongue and groove, comes across the top of a gable end. There are things that are really important that get flashed and sealed correctly. So partnering with us and making sure that we help you through that process, and that we help you find applicators and suppliers that know how to properly do that is part of our process with our homeowners. We talked about solar orientation and shade, allowing there to be some shade to cover and protect the home from that afternoon and that harsh sunlight. That also helps to lower long-term maintenance. And then the last one, and certainly not least, is getting the structure up off finished grade, so that you don't have those rainstorms that splash back on the logs. We typically like to see 24 to 30 inches of exposed foundation wall above finished grade. So if you're doing a basement or if you're doing a crawl space, just getting the log structure up off finished grade so that you don't have a lot of backsplash from those heavy storms splashing back on your logs. When you have structures that are down on finished grade, you do get susceptible to rot and deterioration over time. And you also have some susceptibility to some bug infestation as well. So that's just a good practice to get that structure up off finished grade. And then again, we talked about finish choices with gables and dormers and the types of finish materials you choose, whether it's board and batten or cedar shake siding, or whether it's hardy board or hardy shake. And I know some people have really not thought about doing hardy shake or hardy board in their gables and dormers with the log walls or the walls being log, but we have clients that do that who want to try to lessen the amount of maintenance that they have over time. So certainly a lot of options there for you. This is just an image showing Sashco's products, showing their stains and their clear coats, and Paul will talk more about that, but this is a structure that's got a lot of covered porches, good overhangs, and it's got a lot of the key ingredients to making for a successful and enjoyable build that you don't have a ton of maintenance on, over time. Landscaping being pulled back away from the structure so that you don't have any, plants and shrubs and trees growing into the house. And we'll talk more about that as well. So at this time, I'm going to introduce the special guest, the guest speaker that we have today. His name is Paul Peoples. He introduced himself for all those who were already on the meeting. But for those who weren't, Paul will go back and introduce himself. And Paul, we're glad to have you. Thank you for your partnership and your friendship over these years, working with us and our homeowners to make sure that they have more successful and more enjoyable builds and experiences. So without further ado, Paul Peoples.
Thank you, Matthew. And I'm going to say it again for the people that weren't on. Sashco and Stone Mill have been doing business together for over 20 years. We call it a partnership. I think that word's thrown around too much nowadays. Because it started off as a business relationship and maybe became a partnership after that. But now we're friends. I mean, we talk to each other on weekends and things like that. So being friends I hate to, don't tell anybody else this, but stone mill customers get treated with a whole lot more care than some of my other customers. Um, but Sashco has been in business since 1936. They started off as a window manufacturer, as the name would connotate. But now, my division of Sashco, we manufacture products for log and timber homes. Period. Everything that we do is developed for, tested on log homes, and it takes a special type of coating and sealants to work on log homes, because logs are bigger than 2x4s or 2x6s, and being bigger, they move a little bit more, move a lot more, so that the coatings that you use and the sealants have to be a lot more flexible than what you would use in a conventional home. You know, my real goal here today is not to teach you about long-term maintenance, but how to avoid it. And Matthew really hit it here in the beginning with design. People ask me all the time, how long does your stain last? And I think I'm one of the few people that honestly say, I don't know. I do know how long it lasts on my house, but I don't know how long it's going to last on your house. Now, I can say that if you properly design and maintain your log home, you can have the type of results that I've had with mine. Our family home burned down about 25 years ago, 26, and my little brothers and I went back and built a new log house. It's a 6x12 dovetail home. I've done less work on that home in the last 26 years than I've done on my brick house here in Nashville. My brick house has, I think, 12 or 16-inch roof overhangs, and it has a lot of wood that I've had to replace and paint. My log home has the original stain on it from 25 years ago on 3 sides of the house. Finally, I had to restain the southwest side of the house. But I was lucky enough when I built that house, I was already in the industry, had a bunch of good friends that I asked advice from, and I took it. A lot of people ask me for advice and they don't take it. And sometimes they come back and say, Paul, you were right. Think about it. You're going to build a house with a natural material, which was a tree not too long ago. Trees are designed or developed or have evolved over millennia to grow and take nourishment for the sun and the earth, to grow and fall down and go back to the earth, to rot. There's 2 kinds of wood, I always say. There's wood that's rotten and wood that one day will be rotten. It's our job to stop that process and to build a nice house. There are homes or structures throughout the world that are over 1,000 years old that are wood or log homes. The key is to keep Mother Nature off of it. If you keep wood dry, it can't rot. If you keep the sun off the coatings, they can't deteriorate over a period of time. So consequently, if you have a nice big roof overhang with metal roof that stops the UV rays, and nice gutters and downspouts and wide hanging eaves and rakes, then you don't get water on the log. Keep it dry, keep it clean. That's another thing we'll talk about in a minute. Keep it dry and keep it out of the sun. It'll last forever. The house that Matthew showed a little while ago, aside from the Sashco products that are on there, I love the fireplace and the fire. That's one of the best things about that. But if you look at it, the wood that's underneath there will probably never have to be restained. You'll have to wash it. You get dirt daubers on it. You get spider webs. You get all those type of things. You'll have to wash that house. There's no such thing as a maintenance-free house, but we can help you design and create a house that's about as maintenance-free as any other house out there, even with natural materials. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a house with dormers and things like that are above the roof line, that you might make a choice to use hardy or some other synthetic type material up there, which would would reduce the amount of maintenance that would happen. My other speech that I give to folks is for tips for exterior application. If you don't use my products, for some reason you think you want to save some money somewhere, use a product that was designed for and tested on log homes. You'll only find a few of them out there because logs are different than regular wood. But the most important 2 years of a log's home are the first year and the third year. And this is from experience. This is not written down anywhere. This has been my experience. In the very beginning, we will work with you on your colors. That's some of the other things that we do for Stone Mill customers. We'll work with you on colors. We'll find you people to put it on. Right now Matthew's building a house in Iowa and one in South Dakota. We found people to do the work up there. If you have to hire a local painter or you want to do it yourself, we will talk them through it. Please let us know that you have some special needs. I'm going to Missouri in a couple of weeks from now to help a Stone Mill customer learn how to chink. But let us know what you need and we'll be happy to do it. But don't just hire a guy that's local and says, I've been a painter for 3 generations and I know what I'm doing, because I'm dealing with one of those right now too, and he's got some serious problems. Let us help you. Anyway, the most important part or the time is the first and third year. Get it done right the first time. Make sure that the surface prep is right, the moisture content is correct. And the real key there is simple: clean, dry, warm wood. Those are the things that you need to have a successful application. Don't ever apply in direct sunlight. And people think, well, that's no big deal. That's just because they don't want me to sweat. Wood surfaces in the wintertime in Colorado when it's 42 degrees can reach 160 degrees. Anytime you put a product on hot something, it can dry too quickly and not cure correctly. So make sure the products get on there correctly the first time. Make sure that you get somebody to chink the house that does it correctly. In a 6x12 traditional dovetail home, which is what we're talking about here, the chinking between the logs is the main seal. Now, some people think, well, gosh, that may be something I need to maintain. Well, in 26 years, I've never touched my chinking. I've washed it. Chinking is a permanent, once installed correctly, it's a permanent bond between the logs. The good thing about it is, and unlike other homes, it is the main seal between the logs. That's cool, but it is also inspectable and repairable. The logs between log on log, or the seal between log on log homes is usually not visible. And you don't know whether it's failed or not until you have insects, wind, or water inside your house. So let's put it this way. When my house burned down and I went to rebuild, I chose a 6x12 dovetail house simply for that big, wide chinking gap, or gasket, you might call it, that is inspectable, repairable, and it works well every time. So get it done right the first time. But in this, here we come around to the third year. In the third year, all the things the changes that logs go through have pretty much been done. So you're going to come back and look at the house. That doesn't mean you shouldn't look at the house in the second year or even at the end of the first year. You always want to inspect it every spring and every fall. But it's very important in that third year that you wash the house, that you caulk any checks that you feel might be harmful. Those are the ones that we call them downward facing, so that water can run in and it can't run back out. You caulk those checks, and then you go ahead and apply another coat of clear. And I'm going to tell you about our stains is called Capture, and it's a Capture Cascade system. Capture is the actual pigment coating, and Cascade is a clear gel coat, if you were. If you remember back years ago when your dad used to wash and wax his car every Friday afternoon, because if he didn't, the paint would turn dull and chalky. Well, that same system goes along with our clear coats that go over our stain. So the stain keeps, or the clear coat reduces oxidation. It makes it easier to clean. It's smoother, so dust and dirt doesn't settle on it. And it makes the stain last a lot longer. In addition to that, it's renewable, so that over a period of time, if you see your house turn a slight color shift, or it's not quite as shiny as it used to be, or has a little bit of sheen to it, you simply wash the house, add more clear coat to it, and it'll bring it back just like an automobile that's been ignored for 7 or 8 years, and all of a sudden you wash it and wax it, it looks brand new again. So it's very important in that third year to reapply the clear coat and make sure that you get it down into all the little nooks and crannies that aren't big enough to be caulked, because that gives them waterproofness. And when you first build a log house, you put stain on it, then these little checks appear, which is a natural thing on log houses, natural on other houses too. It's just that with small dimensional lumber, the checks are so small you hardly see them. But you actually put this clear coat on there, excuse me, the logs move when you've got a coating on them, and that coating acts like Gore-Tex. It allows moisture to come out, but it won't let water in. But when the logs check or crack, it tears your Gore-Tex coat. When you come back there 3 years later and you apply more clear, you've repaired the tear in your Gore-Tex coat so that this coating performs the way it should. Again, allowing moisture to come out, but not allowing liquid water to come in. And then after that, you really need to always look at your house every spring and fall. Here in the Southeast, it's almost an automatic that come late May or early June, after all the pollen, you go outside sometime in May and all of a sudden everything is yellow. Your car is yellow, the handrail on your house is yellow, and the logs are dirty too. So come back every June and wash that house. That doesn't mean you've got to get a pressure washer out, spend a bunch of money. It means you buy some simple cleaner called CPR. It costs about $12, and you spray it on the house with a simple pump up sprayer, and you rinse it back off with a hose. Now, you might want to use a long car wash brush or something like that if you've got some bird waste or something like that on the house. But keeping it clean is very important, because if you do allow organic material like dust and pollen, you add a little bit of water to that, and that becomes food for mold and mildew. Mold and mildew actually start to break down coatings over a period of time. So it's very important. Cleanliness is next to godliness. On all homes. It's a good tip for people. I mean, everybody's seen a vinyl sided house that has green all over it. Well, that's simple to avoid, but people don't do it. Log houses are a little bit more difficult because they're natural colors, and you can't see the dirt on there as well. But just like your car, if you don't wash your car for a week, go out there and run your finger on it, and it's going to have dirt on it. Wash your house. People wash their car every week. They don't wash their house. So that's one of the most important things to do. I think that's pretty much what I want to say. Is there any questions at this point, Don, that I need to answer? Or Matthew, do you want to go ahead? I'm not quite sure.
So can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
No, I think you did an excellent job. We're on the slide where we talked about when to inspect. And for anybody that didn't hear that, the inspection is a spring fall. The question that we get asked the most, and one of them, aside from what's the cost per square foot, and let me back up, because these lunch and learns are really opportunities for us to answer tough questions that we get throughout the process. And we get a lot of questions like, how much maintenance is involved in a log home? How much maintenance is involved in a timber frame home? And the reality, and you touched on this earlier on, which I appreciated, is we really don't know. It's going to vary with every single home. You're going to have variations with the amount of maintenance you have based on the geographic location that you're in, the site conditions. Are you building up at 10,000 foot altitude with no shade and cover? Or are you building down in the woods in Western North Carolina, and there's very little UV exposure to the house? In fact, that situation is sometimes the flip side, where you get a little bit more mold and mildew on the structure versus a lot of fading from the sunlight. So every home is going to be a little bit different. So we don't have this standard patented answer. I mean, if we are trying to give somebody a ballpark, we would typically say, once the initial application happens of your stains and your coatings and your caulking and your chinking, about every 3 to 5 years is when you would typically clean and clear coat the structure. But Paul, as you exemplified, your structure, your home, your personal residence has not required that much maintenance, because you've got covered porches wrapping the house, and you're down in the woods, and you've got the right ingredients to create that perfect recipe for lowering long-term maintenance. And so I think you did an outstanding job just touching on that, as far as what driving factors create maintenance and how to avoid them, because that's a good point. You want to try to avoid them, and you do that by good design practices and by setting yourself up to succeed. We never tell a client that we're building a maintenance-free home. There is no such thing as a maintenance-free home. Even brick and vinyl siding requires upkeep and maintenance, and it needs to be cleaned. So you did a phenomenal job of talking about that, when to maintain, what the most critical years are, how to properly maintain. And this is not a presentation about application. Now, we can certainly get our homeowners in touch with professional applicators, or if they're going to try to do some sweat equity, Sashco offers resources on their website about how to properly apply the products. And Paul is also a valuable resource to our homeowners who are trying to do some of that themselves. But one of the things that he mentioned that I can't stress enough is doing it right the first time. Applying stains and coatings, and especially chinking application, is so critical. Making sure that that surface is prepared correctly before the coatings and the chinking products are applied. Making sure that the moisture content is correct, and not applying stains after you've had a big soaking rain, or not applying stains or chinking products after a log is just sat there and baked in the sun for the entire day, and it's the afternoon and you're applying chinking to a really hot surface. And so all of those items are important to the product functioning and working correctly. Another thing that I didn't mention that Paul, will probably validate for me is the colors of your stain have an effect on the amount of maintenance. The darker the stain colors, the more pigment you get worked into the fibers of that wood, typically the longer that stain will last. Whereas the lighter colors don't have as much pigment in them, and they don't hold up as much long term because you've got the UV and water protection coatings. Those clear coats are having to work harder to protect it. Paul, would you agree with that comment?
Yes, I stained my house gray, if that answers the question, because gray lasts longer. If you think about gray, it's a mixture of black and white. White reflects all 100% of UV energy. It looks nice, but you can use some of the darker browns. Generally, the natural colors will not last as long.
Okay, guys, we have a question. So how would you treat the interior side of the log when it comes to sealers and maintenance? So we always talk about the exterior. So what about the interior?
One of the biggest mistakes that people make on the interior is when they get the house up, they look at it and they clean the walls, and they look pretty, and they say, I want it to look just like this, so I'm not going to do anything to it. That's great for about 3 years. And then you get grandkids running down the hallway, dragging their hands on the woodwork, or dogs. We all love dogs, but they walk down the wall, and sometimes they just rub their back on it all the way down through there. And once dirt is worked into that grain of that wood, it is very difficult to get it out. You would basically have to either power wash it, which living in there and power washing is pretty much impossible, or sand it, which is expensive and difficult to do and creates a lot of dust. One of the strengths to clear coats called Symphony is that Symphony is flexible, so it moves with the wood. It won't get the little cracks in it, but it is very cleanable. It's an acrylic product. You can actually have a grandkid run down the hall with a crayon and then come back and wipe it off with Symphony. Also, if you don't put anything on there, and if you've got some natural sunlight that comes into the house, and that's one of the big design things today is lots of glass, lots of natural light in the house, the wood will change color over a period of time. And if you want to prove that, move a picture on a wood wall that's been there for about 10 years, and you can see how much lighter that wood is than the other. We've come up with a new product now called ColorFast that has properties that will stop that process. So basically, if you want the house to look like the day it was put up, you put a coat of this ColorFast product on there, and you put a coat of Symphony over the top of it. Then you have something that's going to stay the same color. That's why we call it ColorFast, and it'll be easy to clean. I personally like a little bit of stain on the inside, so you can skip the ColorFast and use a very natural color on the inside, because it tends to kind of even it out a little bit and make it so it's not quite so busy. So that's the advice that I can give you. Do the inside, don't skip it.
Yeah, and that's really initial application.
Yes.
The maintenance is cleaning the home. That's a personal preference. Some people clean their homes every day. If you went to my mother's house, you could eat off the floor. Whereas unfortunately with my home, we've got 2 dogs and 4 boys, and we don't clean it every day. So that's a personal preference. But as far as maintenance, the maintenance is to the exterior. One of the things that Paul's talking about is your initial applications and how to, even the color tones of that wood out. Same holds true for an area rug and a floor. You pull that area rug off the floor after 10 years or 15 years, and you can see the change in color. But the maintenance coat and the maintenance of a log home and a timber frame home would be to the exterior. The initial coatings that you put on the home are there, like the clear coats, the symphonies, and those types of things are there for initial protection and to help you even everything out. So that's the reason when we talk about maintenance, we talk specifically about the exterior of the home, and we don't really address the inside. But thank you for that additional feedback, and that's a great question as well.
I'm sorry, did I actually answer the question incorrectly? The maintenance on the interior of a log home is exactly what it would be on the interior of any other house.
No, you answered it correctly. I didn't want anybody to think, because we occasionally will get clients that will ask, well, how often do I have to restain the inside? Well, the inside is not a routine maintenance application. It's a one-time. And so it really comes down to the cleaning of it. So that's the reason when we talk in terms of maintenance, we're talking about the exterior of the home only. Couple of things before the next question that I also wanted to mention, helpful tips. These are listed here, and these are 3 of my most important tips. There are certainly many others, and in those helpful resources down below, you can find a full list of those things that you need to pay attention to. But when you get in the home, to have a successful, enjoyable experience, when you're doing annual inspections and when you're doing annual touch-up, and this is no different if you owned a conventional home with brick. This is for any home, not just log homes or timber frame homes. But annually, you want to make sure you're cleaning out gutters and downspouts, because leaves and debris in gutters and downspouts will cause water to pour over the top of the gutter, not terminate into the downspout, and continue to put additional moisture pressure on the structure. The second and really big thing is make sure that you don't ever have bushes and trees and shrubs growing into the home. You want to try to trim those back away annually about 18 inches, because bushes and trees and shrubs will hold moisture against a structure. And when moisture is held against a structure, it starts to break down those coatings. And when you start breaking down those coatings, you're losing protection on that structure. Just like Paul said with dirt and dust, it starts to break down the coatings that you have. Your coatings are there to protect your home, and you don't want to do anything else that would eventually start to break them down and start to deteriorate that. And then the third, which is super important, and some people don't even pay attention to it, and I've seen situations where irrigation systems and sprinkler heads are spraying the logs, spraying the home every morning and every afternoon that they come on, and the homeowners don't even know about it. And what that does is it just continues to put additional pressure on the home that you don't want. And this goes for any home. So make sure that if you have an irrigation system for your flower beds and for your yard, make sure that that's not just completely drenching your structure every morning, because especially in certain spots where it constantly gets wet and it doesn't have the ability to dry out, it's eventually going to start to deteriorate your coatings. And when it starts to do that, now it's getting at your wood. And that's what you want to prevent from happening. So those 3 things are 3 extremely important things. There's others. And if you look down below in that log home maintenance checklist brochure, that link will take you to SASHCO's website, where you can see a full list an annual inspection checklist that you can use each year to say, okay, I've done that. I've cleaned my gutters. I've trimmed my bushes. I've checked my irrigation system. That is so helpful and so beneficial for you long term on having a much more enjoyable experience with your home. So those are that Keeping the Dream Alive brochure is also a super helpful brochure because it talks about the initial applications and picking the right products all the way to maintaining the home over the life of the home so that you have a great experience with it. Hey, thank you so much for y'all being here and for your interest in our company. We're here anytime, stonemill.com, 800-438-8274. You can find our contact information on our website, or at this point, hopefully everybody has their sales consultant's contact information. Reach out to them anytime. They're available, willing to help and answer all your questions. And we greatly appreciate your time, and we hope everybody has a safe and healthy weekend.